Hey everybody, this is David Sable coming to you for New York Festival's Creativity from the Other Side, where we talk with some of the greatest leaders in our industry, in other industries, just incredibly creative people who tell us what creativity is all about, what drives them, what makes them creative, how do they apply creativity to their lives, to their business, to the people they love, to life. And today I'm so excited to have an incredible creative force, somebody that I've just gotten to meet and who will become an FOD, a friend of David, like all by the end of this conversation, maybe even by the beginning, because I've spent a lot of time reading about him and studying what he's done. And it's just so impressive. And obviously I knew of him before. Paul Marobella, who is today the president and CMO of Republic Brands. And those of you, by the way, who are as old as I am, know Republic Brands, because Republic was an important part of our lives, particularly Easy Wider. Important for today, Paul is the chairman of the jury for the Hell's Kitchen Awards. And let me read to you what the Hell's Kitchen Awards is all about, because I think it's an incredible breakthrough and a first in our industry. New York Festivals is introducing a new category called Hell's Kitchen. This category group, like New York City's Hell's Kitchen, through time immemorial, will celebrate advertising around legalized vices, specifically this year, gambling, cannabis, and alcohol work. And we'll talk about that in a minute because it's so exciting and so cool. So anyways, Paul, thank you. Welcome.
David, it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. I couldn't be happier to be chairing this jury and be speaking with you today.
Well, thank you. So let's jump right in and talk about Paul. Tell me about auto detailing.
Auto detailing. Oh gosh, you're going way back, David, right out of the gate. Well, I was 16 outside of Boston and I needed money, and I tried to figure out the best way to make some money in the hot summer days. And I decided that I would wash people's car for more money than I probably deserved. And it worked out for me. And one of the things that I loved about the process, it actually set me up for the rest of my life, was actually the marketing of my little car detailing business. And when I put flyers on people's car and then they would call me, I thought that was the coolest thing. It was like the original direct response advertising. And that became, I always say, that became the basis of why I wanted to go into marketing.
And talk about perfect targeting, right?
Yeah.
On the car.
Car. And even better, I realized, I didn't call this a value proposition at the time, but I realized that I had to be differentiated from the other people in the market. So I told them that I would wash their cars at work, and I had to, slip the building maintenance guy $20 so I could use the hose and the electric, and I got to wash people's cars while they were at the office buildings, around Boston.
I love it. So basically a marketing man from day one, from the very beginning. And I think, again, creativity from the other side, just this notion of the importance of marketing to business, to thinking, and, what passed at the time, in fact, probably passes today still with wilding and such, as absolute perfect targeting. Right where it needed to be, right at the right time. And it was successful for you.
It was. And I like I said, it really set the foundation of what I wanted to do. And, when I look back at some of those old flyers, which I still have, if I could find them, I'd show them to you. I had taglines and I had, things that I didn't know even what they were at the time, right? Like, your car is a reflection of you, right? I'm 16 years old and I'm trying to guilt trip people into getting their cars and their minivans clean. But, from there, I realized marketing was it for me. And I went to Bentley University in Boston and studied marketing, and the rest is history.
So I just want to follow this a little bit, because what I love about your journey is the learning along the way. Yeah. And I think so many people just kind of get into it. So they learn marketing in school, and then they get a job in marketing, and they just keep doing whatever it is that they're doing, which is very nice. But what impressed me and what just so inspired me about you was that you constantly had these little learning moments. So the second learning moment, so learning moment number one was detailing the ability to put flyers on people's cars, pass the guy $20 and use the hose.
Right.
But I'd like you to speak a minute about it ain't easy being blue,
Right.
because that sets you up. And I think that for all of our watchers and listeners and fans of New York festivals, it's a lesson that is timeless.
So my first job, I came out of school in 1992. It was a recession. It was hard to get a job. I had always known I wanted to be on the agency side of the business, on the consulting side of the business. But at the time in Boston, there were only a few agencies, Arnold, Hill Holiday, and, one or two others. And I got a job at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Massachusetts through a connection in the marketing department, running a pretty large territory as a field marketing rep. And it's also where I learned how to negotiate, because I had to negotiate healthcare benefits with the teachers unions, the fire unions, and the police unions. So I learned pretty quickly the art of negotiation.
Love it. Yeah.
But David, you talk about a moment for me. I was young. I was 21 years old, 22 years old, and I had gotten a phone call from one of those teachers. Somehow she had gotten my phone number, and I wasn't customer service, and she was having a benefit issue. As we all know, when you have a healthcare or a benefit issue, it's very personal. It can be very stressful. And I dismissed her. I said, listen, this isn't customer service. I can't help you. I gave her the phone number, and I put her on her way. Well, she ended up calling the CEO of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Bill Van Fossen, who I remember clearly. And Bill was a leader I can remember that led with humility, led with empathy. And instead of dropping the hammer on me, he left a note on my desk, or someone left a note on my desk that was on his letterhead, and said that, next time, we treat everybody with respect, our customers with respect, no matter who they are. And as Kermit the Frog says, sometimes it ain't easy being green. Well, for us, sometimes it ain't easy being blue. And, it's hard being a healthcare insurer. And what I took away from that lesson was, here I am, this 22-year-old kid. He could have fired me. Why is the CEO spending time making sure that, I understand I made a mistake? And I've tried to take that leadership lesson, with me into the organizations and corporations that I've led after that.
And what I think is so important to our industry, particularly now, because everybody's under such pressure, such profit pressure. We don't have enough people working in the agency. I know one major agency, it's down almost 400 open jobs, which is extraordinary.
Wow.
I think the pressure and the notion of over servicing, and people who are saying, guys, sorry, can't deal with that, it's out of scope. Like,
right.
Think about this message. It ain't easy being blue.
Right.
It's easy to blow off somebody, easy to blow off a client, but I think the repercussions are huge.
And how we treat each other. I mean, the agency, I spent almost my whole career in the agency business. And, as we know, it can be stressful, pitching, losing an account, the work isn't where it needs to be, 24 hours before the meeting or the pitch. And certainly we get our 2 hours. Yeah. Or right. Walking into the room.
24 hours is nothing. 24 hours is a lifetime.
Yeah, that's true. Changing it in the lobby is probably more apropos. I think it's a good lesson. It's one that certainly I've broken the rule over the years for sure. I mean, stress can definitely get to you, but that's always been in the back of my mind, and I still have the card.
I love it. So you're also a hockey fan extraordinaire. And hockey is something that I've only recently, personally, ice hockey, gotten into in a huge way. Although, I was involved in ice hockey back in the 90s. I had a catalog called Hot Off the Ice. I was very involved in the NHL. But the truth is, it wasn't my sport. But I now have a grandson who is a major ice hockey player in the New Jersey, belongs to a New Jersey state championship team in his high school team. So I'm very excited. So I like it. But here's the thing, right? It's not that Paul is just like some crazy fan and likes to watch the puck and the occasional major league body check. I think it's the fact that you're involved through the Black Hawk Foundation with inner city kids, and through the NHL as an advisor to diversity. That is impressive, and I think it's important.
Thank you. We'll talk a little bit about that. So diversity and the idea of representation has always been important to me, whether that's in the organizations that I've led or that I've run, or in my life outside of work. And about 25 years ago, I met a gentleman named Anson Carter, and Anson played for the Boston Bruins. He was one of the best Black NHL players that's played. And I'm not sure if you watched the Bruins game the other night, but he raised Willie O'Ree's banner to the heights of the TD Garden in Boston, as he was the first Black NHL player. And Anson and I became close friends. And, since then, he's really shown me what's happened in the NHL around racism and the lack of diversity in the league. And when I moved to Chicago, I became involved with an organization called the Inner City Education Program, or ICE. And the chairman of ICE. And what we do at ICE is we help inner city kids in the neighborhoods in Chicago, which, if you know, there's some pretty bad neighborhoods in Chicago, and help these kids through the game of hockey get scholarships to go to better schools, better private schools in the Chicago area. And we help them learn the game of hockey. We help them with their gear and equipment. Bauer Hockey's been a great partner of ours. And then we raise money to give them scholarships to go to private schools. We have 30 kids under scholarship at the moment. And it's a Blackhawks charity. Through that, I became involved with the Blackhawks and was asked to be an advisor to their foundation, which does amazing work in the community in Chicago. In fact, I have a meeting today with them. And the NHL at the highest level of the game have really been doing a lot of work over the last few years, to eradicate racism from the game at all levels, not just the pro level, and really change the color of the people on the ice and the people in the stands, and really to grow the game. And this has been an incredible, commitment for me over the last year and a half with Heidi Brown-Piercing, who's the CMO of the NHL, and John Betcher, who's the president of San Jose Sharks. And as part of that committee, we're really finding ideas and ways to ensure that everybody feels welcome, not only on the ice, but in the arena. And it's been amazing work. It's my life's work. And I'm very proud of it.
That's awesome. And that's why, Paul, I want to talk about, and I held off to now just to talk about the agency part, because what I so love about the way you present, the way you talk about yourself, the way your career has developed, it's not about, so many people will chart their career by a campaign,
right,
or by a client, or by a particular idea. And I think what's so impressive and so important for everybody to hear is the notion of that same kind of creativity, that same kind of thinking, but applied to transforming organizational culture, which is something you talk about, new business models, diversity and inclusion,
right,
and helping children. I mean, I think that is really something. So now let's come to the agency side a little bit.
Sure.
Former chairman and CEO of Havas North America. Havas is a holding company I know very well. We're always good friends. I'm always been impressed. I loved the idea of the villages. There's so many things about Havas in general that I've always been very respectful of. Spent a lot of time talking to them about some of those ideas.
Yeah.
So just tell us a little bit about applying those issues or those principles back to the agency world.
Of course. We at Havas, I spent almost 10 years there. I left in August of 20. We did a lot of amazing things. Havas, a great company led by Yannick Bolloré, who's a great leader and is definitely committed to diversity and inclusion across the board at all levels of the organization. And my journey at Havas really started in the Chicago office, where I became the president of the Chicago office and had Jason Peterson as my creative partner, who now owns an agency called The Times. And both of us knew from day one, I would say before it became a topic that was on the cover of every magazine, every trade magazine around diversity and inclusion, in 2011, 2012, we were focused on ensuring that we had representation in our agency, because we knew how important that was, not just because it's the right thing to do. In addition to that, because brands are trying to connect with different levels of communities and demographics and ethnicities, and to have a bunch of white people, telling brands how to connect with different demographics, it doesn't feel right. And so we put initiatives in place in our agency, including a variety of inclusion initiatives, diversity initiatives that really grew the percentage of folks in our organization that were non-white, leadership, female leadership across the board. And it was really important to us, and it still is important to Havas, and they've continued to carry that flag.
And tell us about the 3% movement.
Yeah, so the 3% is an organization that really focuses on helping women in leadership in the agency business. And because it's always been important to me, and for whatever reason, I've always had majority female leadership teams. The CEOs that reported to me when I was chairman were majority female, and I put a lot of those folks in place, and they were incredible leaders and still are incredible leaders. And that was 3% was an organization that we were able to get involved in at Havas, that was allowed us to help educate the community and the marketplace, but also for our people to learn about how to be better at creating an inclusion initiative. And we had learned at Havas through our own study that in the middle management, we had great female leadership, but they weren't breaking through to the C level. And we had tried to study and learn and why that was the case, and had put in some training programs and support systems and different things globally that could help the women in our company rise to the next level. And I think as I look at what Havas continues to do to this day, there are some great women in leadership across the board there. So I'd say the work of Patty Clark, their chief talent officer globally, is really paying off.
And one of the things you like to talk about is that change is the only constant in our industry. And I think that it's something that resonated with me, because something that I write about a lot is that this is an industry that has always been at the forefront of creating change, not always at the forefront of making that change part of what they do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've learned is you need a strong stomach to be in advertising. That's for sure. You would agree. And
yeah, I used to have a lot of hair.
Yeah, me too. Change is the only constant, in meaning that even on a day-to-day basis, it's a very fluid industry, right? One day you think your client's in a good place, the next day you're off for review. Somebody who you think is in a good spot. Particularly these days, of course. And that flow can be disruptive to a team that isn't prepared for that level of change, or doesn't have contingency plans in place, doesn't have a constant pipeline of new work or new business that's coming in. But also at the talent level, right? We were all free agents for the most part, and people are able to move freely throughout the industry. And again, David, to your point, especially today, when the great reshuffle is happening and people are looking for different environments or different cultures, or may not be getting along with their chief creative officer, or whatever the situation is. So as an agency CEO, I always say that, to a new CEO, you have to learn how to manage that change, because it's never going to stay stagnant. If it's not changing, something's probably wrong.
So we'll come back to that in a second. But I do want to talk about work, because it'd be remiss of me not to ask you about at least one piece of work. So I'm going to ask you about one specific piece of work. I know it's a piece that you said you were involved with only at the end, but I think it is an important piece of work for Havas. And it just sort of, to me, it always defined a particular way of thinking,
right,
and influenced a ton of other agencies. And obviously I'm talking about the most interesting man in the world.
Right. Yeah, that was, like you said, that campaign was on before we had gotten our hands on it. And there were some people that came before us that really set the course on that. So we have to give them the credit. But to your point about change is the only constant, that was a campaign that I think really changed the perception of what's actually possible in a category, right? So when you look at the beer category, and this, the advertising in the category was very similar across the board. It was very hard to differentiate one brand from another brand based on what they were using as tropes in their advertising campaigns. And I think to pitch an idea that says, hey, listen, we're going to have an old guy who's surrounded by beautiful women, and he's going to say he doesn't always prefer beer, but when he does, he prefers Dos Equis, is probably something that would not get sold in 10 out of 10 times, for a brand that had any meaningful market share. But, those that came before us sold it. And, Dos Equis was owned by Heineken, and it was a brand that nobody really knew at the time. So they felt that you could take a bit of a risk on that brand, and they did. And that brand, hockey sticked. And if you look at the success that happened on that brand, it was really incredible to be a part of it. And at the point we came in, there were two things that happened. One was what was the digital strategy for the campaign, right? So a very TV heavy strategy, outdoor heavy strategy, print heavy strategy. Well, how does the digital and social strategy play a role in peeling back the onion on who the most interesting man in the world is? And it was a great digital strategy. And the idea is that, why does he prefer Dos Equis? When did he learn about Dos Equis, right? So really peeling back the onion on the origin stories of when he learned about the beer. How did he learn about it? Why does he prefer it? Who is he actually? Where did he come from? What battles did he fight? So our digital strategy really brought back the layers on who he was. And then
can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure, please.
So but let's say about what you just said, because I think this is again important for our listeners and watchers in terms of what creativity and what digital is. So it wasn't that you were digitaling, you were storytelling.
Correct.
In other words, it wasn't like, okay, we have a digital strategy. Whoa, it's really cool. We're on Twitter, we're on this, we're on that, and we're going to create immersive experiences. What you did is you dove into the story and you used the channels the way they were created to be used so that you could dive deeper, so that you could peel back the onion, as you say.
Yeah, and almost create the sense of prequels, if you will, right? So the thing is that you'd see these TV spots and you would get caught up in that 30-second story about whatever he was saving, or the damsel in distress, or whatever battle he was fighting. But the story was never told of how he got on that boat in the middle of the ocean, when it was, pouring rain, and he had the story was never told to get there. So we use digital to help round out and shape out those kind of the broader palette of the storytelling.
And I love that. Again, I think that's the issue, right? It's connected back to the story. It's using the channels for what they're created for, which is to expand stories, to give you an opportunity to go past that 30 seconds, which whets your appetite, to like, how the hell did he get on that boat?
Right.
And be able to go actually search it out and find it. I think that was amazing. One of the things that you talk about that I loved, and again, just so impressive just because of the way you presented, is your belief in mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you share? People are searching today for mentors. So many people out there have finally woken up to the fact that it's actually good to have a mentor. We don't know everything.
Right.
And we don't have enough people in the industry left who actually know a whole lot.
Right.
How do I get a mentor? And you've had some incredible mentors in your life.
I have. It's actually been the great gift of my life. If I could say it any bigger than that, I would. I just think that I've been incredibly lucky at all stages, starting from being a teenager, even through today. And I continue to search mentors and, find people as we go through different phases in our lives, and we face, different challenges, and, as our kids grow up and we face, different phases of our career. It's important to have people in your life to help you get through that. And I don't know that I ever really sought out a mentor, to be honest. I think that being tuned in to what's happening around you in your life and being present to those that are in your life is how I found mentors. So I've had people around me, that took a liking to me or took a spark to me. And if I wasn't present and didn't see that and didn't lean into it, I probably wouldn't have had those people in my life. I talked about my job at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Well, I got that job through a baseball coach that I had, in high school, and he became a mentor of mine. He's still a very close friend of mine. Here we are 35 years later. I've lost count. and he's still in my life, but he's not necessarily a mentor to me anymore, because, he helped me through different phases in my life, and somebody else came along and helped me through a phase in my life. A couple of agency CEOs that believed in me when I was young and I didn't have any experience, and I really wanted to get in the agency category, and I had no work to show. I had no new business wins under my belt, and they saw something in me and put me in roles that I probably wasn't qualified for. And luckily I was successful. And I've had a couple. One is the guy named Tucker Greco, and he owned an agency in New York called Greco Etheridge Group, which was a pretty successful B2B agency, tech agency in the 90s. And he gave me my shot. And, God rest his soul, he passed away a few years ago. But, to this day, he's still a mentor to me, even though he's not walking the planet anymore, because I think about how he would handle a challenge or how he would handle a situation through his lens. So my advice is just be present. There are people in your atmosphere that could be your mentors, that are leaning into you. And if you have your head in your phone and you have your head in your issues, you're probably not paying attention to it. So that's just my advice there.
I love it. And that's something I've written a lot about, because I've also been blessed in life with incredible mentors. Some who are no longer with us, but literally in my head every single day. I can honestly say that. And I so agree with you. Just one last piece on just general life advice for people who are listening. And this one also talked to me, because it's another one that I've talked about and written about extensively, but this notion of work-life balance being a bit of a mirage. And I think it's important today because of the great resignation or the great reshuffling or the great whatever it is you want to call it. But I think this notion of pursuing some kind of work-life balance that is only about you is a bit of a mirage, and also not necessarily productive. I've always said that I'm always like 100% and 100%. In other words, like if you spend your life thinking about work-life balance, you can never do a good job, because all you're doing is thinking, today I did 60%, so tomorrow I'll do 40%.
Right.
How do I do 50? So you're constantly balancing stuff, as opposed to, as I learned early on in my life, my wife said, like, whatever you do, just be in it 100%. So if I'm working, I'm in it 100%. When I'm home, I'm 100%. And when I'm working with somebody else, I'm 100%. So 100%, 100. So sometimes it can add up to 400%.
I like that.
But that's okay, because in the moment, you're 100%. So it seemed to me that you were coming from a very similar place.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I think work-life balance itself would indicate that life is linear, and that you can, do those things. And to me, when I've been most successful at work-life balance, it's been less linear. It's been more fluid and integrated, right? So I think that is why people are pushing back about going to the office every day for 8 to 10 hours a day, because they want to be able to, if they want to take an hour to themselves and meditate or jump on the treadmill and just find a way to do the other things in their life that are important, I think it actually makes them better employees. And there's a certain level of trust that us as employers have to, empower on our people, right? We have to be able to believe that they're going to get their job done. They're committed to the company.
Exactly.
And that they're adults. Everybody, we're hiring adults. That's what I always say. And if we can't trust them to do the work that they need to do, it doesn't necessarily mean it's in an 8 straight hour timeline. Then we're not doing leadership right, especially in 2022. So there's a lot of things that I love to do, especially as we get older and we have families, and it's getting a little harder to stay in shape, and there's all these things that we're trying to do. I still love to play hockey, and it's hard to play at 10:30 at night, which is when the men's league games are, the recreational league games. So you might have to sleep in a little bit and the next day. And so I think that level of fluidity and doing the things that you love. There's a Stoic phrase that I'm a big fan of, and I actually have it tattooed on my arm, and that's Memento Mori, and that's you will die. Death is inevitable, and that might sound dark, but it is light, because it's live your life to the fullest. It's
every
really,
moment.
every moment, enjoy it, because tomorrow's not
100% in
promised.
whatever you do.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. But I think to your point, that notion of trust is really, it's incredibly important for companies to trust their employees. With that trust, the piece that you need to get back is accountability for getting it done.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. I think that's what we've broken down. There's no trust and there's a lack of accountability.
That's right.
And so we need to fix both sides. Employers need to get back to the trust piece, but people who work need to understand what accountability is. And sometimes accountability, I had just an interesting occurrence with an agency in New York, great, incredible creative group, wonderful people, great work. Came Wednesday before Thanksgiving, they hadn't finished something. And it was like, okay, guys, we'll see you on Monday. I was, no, I don't think so. You were contracted to finish this. It's launching on Sunday.
Right.
They said, yeah, but we have Thanksgiving vacation. It's like, whoa. Like, I didn't know that was like a God-given right.
Right.
You have an obligation, like finish it. I have the same obligation. I'm going to be here working with you and we'll get it done. But it was just so interesting to me that there was just this lack of accountability. I had the trust, but then I realized afterwards that I hadn't put that together beforehand. And so to your point, I think that's
a great point.
So let's start moving towards the Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
But talk a little bit about Republic Brands, plant to puff. Now I have to say, back in the day, not that I know anything, but that was
a pretty good pro roll right there.
I was actually pretty good. Easy Wider was, outside the fact that it was one of the great T-shirts of all time, and wearing it when I think back to when I was a teenager, wearing an Easy Wider T-shirt, you felt almost like a criminal. Like you had that little bit of gangster in you. You might get arrested because you're wearing an Easy Wider T-shirt, So I love the fact that it's become more mainstream. It's back in people's consciousness.
Yep. So Republic Brands is a great company and has been a great pivot for me to go from the agency side back to the brand side. And I took the role because, it has great ownership team. And it's a rare opportunity in a brand guy's career to take on a portfolio of brands that are some almost 200 years old. And some of them are very French brands like OCB and Job. They're very French brands. Easy Wider is an American brand. And
your new brand, Champagne?
Champagne, we have a Champagne Papers brand. I'll get into that. I'll get into that in a second.
Good. I want you to talk about that.
That was actually a positioning piece, but we'll talk about that. And then you get into this category, and honestly, these brands had never been marketed to consumers, if you can believe it. It's a B2B company. They did a really amazing job at marketing into wholesale and distributors, and then getting shelf presence. But anymore, with legalization happening, the idea of creating an emotional connection with the consumer and helping them shop the category that you would think would be a very disposable, low consideration category, but it really isn't. That's why I did it. And to get in early on a category, we're not in the plant touching part of the business, but we're adjacent to it. And as things legalize, our business grows as well. So, the idea of being a part of something like that was too hard to resist. And that's why I made the move to be a part of that. So Easy Wider specifically was a brand that our ownership team had bought about 3 or 4 years ago. And the brand had been a little bit neglected, I would say, throughout the 2010s, and the brand has started to decline. And being from Boston, Easy Wider was a brand that I was most familiar with, and the brand that I may or may not have used in my college days.
But never inhaled, so it's okay.
Never inhaled. That's right. And so the thing we love about Easy Wider, and again, David, as you know, when you take on a portfolio of brands, finding each brand's role in the portfolio is critical, right? So you look at how Brown-Forman or Coca-Cola organize their brand portfolio. my first job was to do that with our portfolio. And the Easy Wider brand specifically is positioned as the outlaw and rebel brand in the portfolio, or as we like to say, cool before it was legal. And that's sort of the subline. The idea for Easy Wider actually came from the guy who sold me my Harley. And he said to me one day he's like, bro, you got to live life between the dash. And I was like, live life between the dash? What does that mean? He said, your gravestone. He's like, the day you're born, dash, the day you die, you got to live the dash. And I'm driving home and I'm thinking about Easy Wider, which is E-Z wider. And it's, live your life to the fullest and all that stuff we talked about earlier, Memento Mori. And as you know, it's like, ding, that's the campaign for Easy Wider, live between the dash. And I haven't given my Harley guy the royalties yet on that, but hopefully he won't see this. Hopefully he won't see this podcast.
I love it. What a great, just even how you came to the idea that synapse jump is such a great learning moment for everybody.
Again, it's being present. I think that's the biggest part of creativity for me is when I'm at my most creative, I'm the most present, because inspiration is all around you.
All around.
And people will say things to you. You might be reading a book and find inspiration there and make what they say was creativity is just putting together things that already exist in new and interesting different ways, right? So, finding those things to put together and those formulas is, to me, is the idea of creativity.
So now say we're just about the champagne paper.
So the cool thing about our company, and you mentioned Plant to Puff a second ago, is that we're a vertically integrated organization, meaning that we have oversight of the fields that our fibers come from. We own the paper mills in France. And I just got back in December from Evian, France, where our paper mill is, where all the paper is made. And from there, our paper goes to Perpignan, France, which is in southwestern France, where all of our booklets are made. And then it comes to the United States. But the fibers of our paper, where we source those fibers from, is important. And the organic hemp that's in our papers are grown and sourced from Champagne, France, the same place that champagne comes from. And nobody had ever told these stories before in the organization about where our fibers were sourced from, and really bringing that sustainability story to the forefront. And so we had decided, hey, these are champagne papers. And, the idea of having champagne papers was, I would say, a marketing angle, but nonetheless really resonated. And we had done a partnership with Cash Money Records last year. It was a limited edition drop with Cash Money Records. And we had used the organic hemp paper and called them champagne papers. And that was a big hit and really resonated. And we did a very bling, book pack. And so, again, the idea of storytelling, the idea of finding those little nuggets that you can really connect with the consumer on is what we're up to.
And now you've brought that same sensibility, that same kind of thinking, that creativity, that out of the box transformational notion to New York festivals and the Hell's Kitchen Awards.
Right. Well, I couldn't be happier to chair this jury. We're going to have some amazing people on the jury. Folks that I've worked with, some that I haven't worked with. A lot of these folks have worked on Vice brands, so they understand, the motivations a consumer has when they purchase brands in this category and how it connects with them. I've certainly worked on many in my career, including Cabo Wabo tequila for Sammy Hagar and Jim Beam and Jack Daniels and Godiva chocolates, if you want to consider chocolates a vice. And, the biggest vice of all, Cracker Barrel. I mean, Cracker Barrel is he's great vice, right?
Right, totally.
So I think it all depends on how you define vice, but it's, I think the idea of sparking the, the endorphins in people's brains, as it relates to whatever the product is that they're consuming, it probably is the idea of vice.
And what I love about it, amongst just the fact that we're going to see some incredible creativity, is that the work we're going to see. So we all know alcohol has always been a source of great creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know that it's also been the source of a lot of stuff that just got done for the shows.
Right.
Which is okay. But, I always have an issue with that, but that's a separate story.
Right.
But there's always been good work. I think that this is a category right now, particularly in gambling, particularly with cannabis, where it is scrappy because I got to sell. I've got to get customers. I
Right.
need market share.
Well,
So
gambling,
people don't have the time, the money, or the wherewithal, or even just they just don't want to do it. They need to be focused. And so I think that's why the work is so interesting.
well, I think in gambling specifically, to your point, it's almost a customer acquisition model, right? So you have to have the idea of creativity, but DraftKings and BetMGM and in these other platforms are really customer acquisition engines. And having the idea of memorability and getting people to download the app, and then once they've downloaded the app, keeping them engaged and keeping their retention going, it really is. What's interesting about it is that it's bringing together creativity with full life cycle marketing, which is not what happens in beer and spirits, right? The beer and
Right.
spirits is about aided and unaided awareness, and hopefully you'll call it at the bar, you'll pull it off the shelf. The idea of the gambling category is a really, really interesting one, and I can't wait to see the work there, because it should be 360 work if it's done properly.
Without a doubt, it should be 360 work. It should be interesting. It should be important. So a word to people who are submitting work. What should they be thinking about? What are you going to be looking for?
I'm going to be looking for the insight. And I know that that's a bit of a cliche in our industry, but I always say the hardest insights are in dark places, under rocks, where nobody can find them. And if you just turn over one rock at the top and you think that's the insight, to me, that's not the insight. I look for dirty hands. I look for people that have really dug deep to get to the core of what that idea is. And in these categories, I think that we're going to be looking at on this jury, there have been a lot of amazing strategy and creative teams over the decades that have uncovered some insights in the spirits, beer, and in other categories. So those insights are becoming harder to find. It's almost like mining for Bitcoin. There's only so many of them out there. And we're going to be looking for that. But also, I like to look for the detail in the execution, the production. Did the team take the time to actually craft the little details that maybe a lot of consumers wouldn't see, but people with a sharp eye, or maybe after the fifth time they've seen the spot or seen the work, are they seeing something that may spark another point of view for the work?
Like the right way. Never mind, we won't go there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in the cannabis category, I'm sorry, I have the sun coming in here, which feels nice, but it doesn't look good on the TV.
No, that's okay. Don't worry.
In the cannabis category, it's such a new category. And some of the work that I've seen in the cannabis category already is, and this jury will look for that, is that they're confusing some level of storytelling around cannabis with an idea. And there is some good work some actually amazing design work in the category. And it will be interesting to see, because of the regulations of where you can and can't advertise. It's very similar to other categories, how the creative team and the agency team and the brand team worked around those regulations to connect with the consumer and differentiate themselves from, because it's still a bit of the Wild West in the cannabis industry. So that work will be interesting to see.
And as we know, some of the greatest little underground and above ground artwork in the late 60s, early 70s was around cannabis. And just some of the greatest, what today we would call a meme, I guess, is just amazing work that is so redolent and I think will be here forever. Is just great examples, not of marketing, although it was, but of just great art and cultural moments that are worth studying if they haven't been seen or if they're not remembered.
Well, I'd go back to the 19th century. I mean, one of our brand's job, JOB, in the 19th century. I mean, they commissioned, I'll actually call them the original influencers. They commissioned artists like Muka and others to create these incredible posters, which I'm sure you've seen that hang in museums. I mean, they're multi-million dollar posters. And we have some of them, our owner has some of them. And plus we have many, replicas in our office. But we've started to bring that art and that sensibility back to the brand in this century. And it's incredible to see how the spirit of creativity lived in the early days in the paper category, and hopefully that will come back.
I'm glad you brought that. I forgot all about that. I had my head in the cannabis, but yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. I mean, that some of those posters, and interestingly enough, you can find, I mean, they're still sold in art stores
Yep.
as art. So obviously they're mostly reproductions, but they're still beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. And
Bella Park, I mean, really just amazing, just great artwork. Absolutely.
right. Right. And I think that, again, that idea of design, that idea of creating an emotional connection through creativity is we'll see if that's coming through in the cannabis category today. I'm starting to see it do so, but we'll see.
Good. Well, Paul, what can I say? Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
This has been just an incredible, for me, and I hope for you, it was just an incredible discussion. I've learned a ton. And I hope that everybody who's listening has, and I'll just point out a few things. Just remember that it ain't easy being blue lesson. I think that's one of the things that really stuck out to me. I think your involvement with youth and the NHL and the way you're involved with the NHL is so important to people who are looking for purpose in life. It's like, take what you do and apply it to something bigger.
Yes.
And to me, that's such an important lesson, particularly for people who are looking for work-life balance. There's a really good way to get into your 100% on every side. It's just take what you do and apply it to changing the world, to transforming organizations, to transforming the world. I think that is just incredible. Look for the insights under rocks and dark places, because I think that's just such a great lesson. And we look forward to hearing great things from this jury. I'm so excited.
Thank you, David. Yeah, we're excited to announce the jury. There's some amazing people on it, and we're going to have some fun, that's for sure. So please submit your work, and let's get going.
Great. And I can't wait to be with you in person. Have a dinner in Chicago, New York, or wherever the hell we do, and talk more about all these issues and more. So Paul Marobella,
David Sable,
President and CMO of Republic Brands, one of the just great, incredible, iconic brands of the world. If you don't know them, learn about them. To me, it was just such an exciting brand. It always was. And I think it will be even more exciting. Pay lots of attention to the new category, to Hell's Kitchen. I think one of the great things in New York festivals and creativity from the other side is that we bring you Hell's Kitchens. We brought you Bowery Awards. I think we're pushing the boundaries on what the award category should be, because it is about creativity. It's not about anything else. It's about, how do you get to creativity? It's how do you get creativity? Where does creativity come from in you? Where does it come from around you? How do you stay, to your point, present in the moment and always understand? And Paul, thank you for becoming an FOD, a friend of David.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
It's my honor.
After all these years, finally.
After all these years. No, thank you so much. It's really amazing. And so this is David Sable, out for New York Festivals, creativity from the other side. We look forward to seeing you again. Pay attention to our broadcasts, pay attention to our interviews, the learning opportunities, dig deeper, go into your digital sources, learn more about Paul, learn more about the brands, learn more about Hell's Kitchen. Stay safe out there. COVID's still running around.
Yeah.
And great to see you all. See you again.